Hello, and welcome to our training for IGC Official Observers. This is the third version of the video, which is compatible with the 2023 release of our sporting code. My name is Howard Mills. I'm currently a member of the IGC Sporting Code Committee and also Claims Officer for the German Aero Club DREC. Here is an overview of the contents of our training. The initial version of this training was created for the German Aero Club DREC. To create this training, the Sporting Code was searched for activities involving official observers. Also, some flight recorder approval documents were referenced. The presentation is mostly concerned with activities on the airfield, i.e. before takeoff and after landing. It does not cover the various requirements for badges, etc. This knowledge is required of the pilot and the data analyst. Following requests and suggestions, the presentation has been reverse engineered from the original German version to create a more generic version in the English language. Why do we have official observers? The official observer is our referee. He must have the integrity and competence necessary to control and certify flights. He is the representative of the FAI on the airfield. He controls flights for badges and records according to the requirements of the Sporting Code. We now come to some definitions. The FAI is the world governing body for all air sports. The IGC is the FAI Commission, which is responsible for gliding activities, especially for records, badges and international competitions, but not for aerobatics. GFAC is the Flight Recorder Approval Committee. They test new flight recorders and create the IGC approval documents. FR is the abbreviation for flight recorder, and in some countries is commonly referred to as loggers. The position recorder is a simplified flight recorder and may only be used for silver and gold badge flights. And finally, OO is the commonly used abbreviation for Official Observer. The National Airsport Control, abbreviated to NAC, has the administrative responsibility for a nation's sport aviation activities. The pilot's nationality or residency determines the NAC responsible for looking after his sporting activities. This is known as the organising NAC. The controlling NAC is the NAC of the country in which the flight originates and is responsible for controlling and analysing the flight. When a flight originates within the jurisdiction of the organising NAC, the organising and controlling NACs are one and the same. When a flight originates in a country other than that of the organising NAC, the NAC of the host country, in other words the controlling NAC, shall control the flight. The FAI Sporting Code General section contains the rules common to all FAI air sport activities. This document is developed and maintained by the FAI Air Sport General Commission. Then there are specialised sections. Each specialised section contains rules that apply to a specific FAI recognised air sport discipline, in our case gliding. The documents are only available in the English language. Sporting Code Section 3 Gliding specifies the rules that apply to FAI badge and record flights in gliders and motor gliders. This is commonly abbreviated to SC3. SC3 includes the following annexes. Annex A contains the rules for world and continental competitions. Annex B contains the requirements for equipment used for flight validation. Annex C is the Official Observer and Pilot Guide. Annex D contains the rules for the World Ranking List of pilots. The complete Sporting Code for gliding activities comprises a general section together with Section 3. Annex C contains advice, but no rules. We now answer the question, where do I find the sporting code? IGC documents, including the sporting code, can be found under the link shown here. The link is also included in the description of the video. We click on Sporting Code Section 3 Gliding, then on Current Sporting Code for Gliding, and the first item is the Sporting Code Section 3, the current edition. We are mainly interested in Sporting Code Section 3 and Annex C. These are created by the IGC Sporting Code Committee. Chapter 1 contains the general definitions and rules. Chapter 2 contains badges and badge procedures. Chapter 3 contains records and record procedures. Chapter 4 concerns official observers and certification. And Chapter 5 contains the glider classes which are relevant for competitions and records. Here is an overview of the following slides in our training. We will cover the requirements to become an official observer. We then cover the actions required before takeoff. These include confirming the pilot name and glider and controlling the flight recorders. We then cover the actions following the landing. These include controlling the flight recorders, performing or supervising the transfer of data from the flight recorders, and claim submission. Now we will cover the requirements to become an official observer. Official observers are appointed by their organizing NAC and act within its jurisdiction, i.e. within their country's territory or borders. Visiting official observers may be appointed prior to a flight by the controlling NAC to act on its behalf. There is, however, no obligation on a controlling NAC to approve such a request. Generally, the official observer's organizing NAC should be able to assist in applying for such approval from the NAC of the country they intend to visit. As the representative of the FAI, the official observer oversees FAI badge and record attempts, and any other soaring performance a NAC may define within its authority. In case of a violation of duty by an official observer, the appointment of the official observer shall be withdrawn. Official observers must be familiar with the code and the air regulations pertinent to the flight, and have the integrity and competence necessary to control and certify that flight. Official observers should be familiar with evaluation problems as outlined in Sporting Code Section 3 Annex C. This clearly depends on the way the NAC has organized the analysis of claims. Some NACs allow all official observers to perform this task, while others process claims centrally, in which case the official observer on the airfield is relieved of this duty. An official observer shall be familiar with or have available from the pilot the GFAC approval documents of any flight recorder used. This also applies to any position recorder that the controlling NAC might have approved. All persons involved in data verification and claim approval must conform to the FAI Code of Ethics, evaluating the claim objectively according to the rules and procedures of the code. As such, no one involved in a world or continental record claim may have a special personal interest in the outcome of that claim. Official observers may not act for any record or badge attempt in which they have any financial interest, or in which they are the pilot or passenger. We now come to recommended procedures for the organizing NAC. NAC should establish requirements for becoming an official observer, such as holding at least a silver badge, or having an association with the sport for some minimum amount of time. It is useful to issue guidance and training material, self-help tests, etc., to assist new official observers to gain knowledge of the code and to allow experienced official observers to stay current on changes to the rules. NAC should maintain a list of their current official observers and their contact information, thus enabling the distribution of information such as for changes to badge and record procedures, and national factors that will influence badge and record flights. We will now cover the activities prior to the takeoff of the glider. Before takeoff, the pilot selects a flight recorder or recorders in his aircraft that he will use to document this flight. The official observer controls these by confirming that the flight recorders in the aircraft are installed according to their approval document, and, for each flight recorder, noting the type and serial identification. Next, where do I find the approval documents? We start off at the internet address for IGC documents. We scroll down to Flight Recorders and click on it. We then click on IGC Approved Flight Recorders Approval Documents and on Approval Documents for all IGC approved flight recorders. We then see a table of all approved flight recorders. When we click on this, the table is opened. Let's assume we're interested in the LX9000 device, and you can see here that it is approved for all flights. If we click on the link on the right-hand side, the document opens. Where do we find the flight recorder's serial identification? The flight recorder serial identification, or SID, comprises 3 or 6 characters. Many instruments display this information during power on, sometimes only briefly. In the example shown here, the serial ID is 6 Zulu Papa. For LX8000 and 9000 flight recorders, and probably many others, the serial ID can also be displayed via the menu item Setup About. Many flight recorders have the serial ID on the casing. Unfortunately, this is mostly on the back, and thus is probably not visible when installed into the instrument panel. Beware, some LX8080 flight recorders have duplicate serial IDs due to a production error. New serial IDs were assigned during a firmware update, and of course these do not match to those on the casing, and also not on the previous calibration datasheet. Relevant is the serial ID displayed by the device. So when submitting a claim for a badge or record, the data analyst should be made aware of this problem. This issue only affects some LX8080 flight recorders. Some flight recorders, especially older units, do not display their serial IDs. What can be done here? One possibility is, before the flight, read an old IGC file from the flight recorder. The file name contains the serial ID, as shown here. The serial ID is also contained within the file's first line. Then you would make a note of this serial ID. With a standalone classic FLARM, the 3-character SID is located on the hologram sticker on the side of the unit, as shown here. According to the manufacturer, the 3-character code is not printed anywhere on a power FLARM. Here the complete serial number of the unit should be used. If present at takeoff, the official observer shall confirm pilot name or names and the glider flown, type and registration. If the official observer is not present at takeoff, he must seal each selected flight recorder to the glider. The sealing method is described in the flight recorder approval document. A flight recorder permanently mounted in the instrument panel with cables and pitot-static tubes attached behind the panel and inaccessible to the pilot in flight can be considered to be sealed to the airframe. How is a flight recorder installation controlled? Well, refer to the approval document for each relevant flight recorder. If a flight recorder was not sealed, the official observer must continually observe the glider until takeoff in order to ensure that no swapping of the unit takes place. Alternatively, An official observer must continually observe the glider from the landing until the flight recorder or flight recorders is or are controlled in order to ensure that the files are transferred from the correct flight recorders. This is especially important for flight recorders such as the LXNAV Nano, since they are very small and portable. The official observer must ensure that such a flight recorder was really in the aircraft. Some method is needed by which the pilot and official observer can record information before takeoff that is required by the official observer after landing and the data analyst. Such information includes pilot name or names and aircraft details, independent of the declaration, and which flight recorders will be used to document the flight. Some NACs use a flight certificate, on paper or electronically. This presentation assumes a paper variant. This is not to be confused with the declaration itself. Please note that written declarations are not permitted anyway since October 2021. I will now run through the possible usage of a flight certificate. The pilot obtains the flight certificate, assuming it's on paper, and enters details into the top half. The official observer verifies the pilot name or names, aircraft details, and flight recorder type and serial IDs. The pilot and official observer enter the date and time and sign off this section. No further changes are permitted. In case of an error, it's best to start afresh. The next slide shows how such a flight certificate might be filled out before takeoff. Here we see an example of a flight certificate with the information that is entered prior to takeoff. We see the pilot name and date of flight, the aircraft type and its registration. In this case, just one flight recorder will be used. The takeoff location should be a bit more precise than just one country. It should be an airfield. The airfield altitude is not strictly required by the sporting code, but it is very helpful for the data analyst when he comes to process the claim. And then the whole thing is signed off. The 5-hour duration flight for the silver and gold badges is somewhat of an exception. It can be flown without using a flight recorder if the flight is under continual attention of an official observer. This does not mean that the official observer has to continually observe the aircraft. It just must be ensured that no intermediate landing took place, and the declaration prior to takeoff is not mandatory for the 5-hour duration flight, but it does no harm. There has always been a number of misconceptions and urban myths surrounding the duties of an official observer. Nowhere in the sporting code is the official observer mandated to perform actions such as verifying that the flight recorder has the necessary approval level for the intended flight, or to verify that the declaration is complete and correct. The official observer can certainly give advice, but is not required to do so. The responsibility for having correct flight recorder and the declaration correct and other such things lies solely with the pilot. We now come to activities around the takeoff sequence. For all badge flights, the pilot must be alone in the glider. And it's amazing how often one's asked. Not even your spouse, girlfriend, or instructor are allowed to be on the second seat. For flights for records in multiplace gliders, refer to Section 3 of the Sporting Code. According to Chapter 4 of the Sporting Code, evidence is required independent of any flight recorder to confirm the time and location of takeoff, the pilot name or names, and the glider identification. The entries in the daily flight log suffice for this purpose. For a silver or gold duration flight controlled by the continual attention of an official observer, in other words, one that is not documented by a flight recorder, this official observer must also witness and certify the times of release and of landing. We now come to the actions that take place following the landing. The official observer who observes and controls the landing is not necessarily the same one who was involved before the takeoff. From the flight certificate or whatever equivalent your NAC uses, it is clear which flight recorders were controlled by the official observer before takeoff, and also whether the flight recorder or recorders were sealed or not. The flight recorder approval documents require that an official observer must observe the landing and keep the aircraft under continuous observation until the installation has been witnessed. This clearly has its problems if there's an outlanding. Some flight recorders are very small and portable. The official observer must ensure in which aircraft such a recorder was actually installed. Neither the flight recorder nor the storage medium may be removed from the aircraft before the official observer can perform or supervise the data transfer. For every flight recorder, an official observer must examine all seals that were applied before takeoff, perform or supervise the data transfer, enter the file name or names into the flight certificate, or verify these names if the pilot has already done that, and confirm the security of each file using the appropriate validation program and verify continuity of flight. Important note, this applies to every flight recorder that was selected by the pilot before takeoff and controlled by the official observer. These will be shown on the flight certificate or whichever equivalent method is used. The data is to be transferred either to a computer or directly to a storage device such as a memory stick or card. This should be done as soon as possible after the landing. It is important to use the data transfer method specified by the manufacturer. In practice, few official observers will have a laptop with a validation software available on the airfield. However, it is advisable to validate the files as soon as possible, so that if an error is detected, a new attempt can be made to transfer the data. The original data from each memory device must be submitted with the claim. This must include the ITC file and the device file in its original format, if different. The sporting code states that the official observer should forward these files to the designated data analyst in order to exclude possible manipulation. The responsible NAC will have specified how this is to be done. Referencing files uploaded to the internet is not acceptable. If a flight certificate or something similar has been used, the after landing section should be completed. The official observer would then verify the content and sign. The following is very important when multiple flight recorders were used. The data files from all flight recorders that were selected for use by the pilot and controlled by the official observer prior to takeoff must be transferred and provided to the data analyst. Even if one of the multiple flight recorders on board failed during the flight, all flight recorders must be read out for analysis. Why is this? To allay the suspicion that the pilot had non-identical tasks programmed into each flight recorder, chose to fly the most suitable task, and the other flight recorder conveniently had a power failure. Also for badge claims, the official observer should forward the files directly to the designated data analyst. For pragmatic reasons, some NACs proceed as follows. The official observer retains a first copy of all files involved, and the pilot submits his copy with all further documentation to the designated data analyst. In case there are questions, the data analyst can request the files from the official observer. When a flight has been successfully completed, a claim needs to be submitted for the badge or record. Each NAC will have their own claim forms for badges or national records. Claims for FAI World or Continental records must use the appropriate FAI record claim forms. FAI records will be covered later in this video. Where should the claim be submitted? This depends on how the relevant NAC is organized. Some NACs require that all claims be submitted to their central office. Others, and these are usually the larger NACs, require that claims be submitted regionally, and only successful claims are passed outwards to the central office. If the flight took place in a foreign country, the claim has to be submitted to the controlling NAC. They will communicate the results of the analysis to the organising NAC. However, if the controlling NAC has agreed that the analysis can take place back home, a representative of the controlling NAC must first confirm that the flight was flown legally. The possibility of the controlling NAC delegating the analysis of a flight to the organising NAC is in principle independent of whether the officiating official observer was a local or is from an external NAC. We now come to processing the claim, i.e. analysing the data. The sporting code just states that a person approved by the NAC shall perform the data analysis. Who does this and how depends on the NAC. In some countries, all claims are processed by one person. This is the claims officer. In other countries, claims are processed at regional level. The central office then issues the certificates for badges. The person analysing a claim must proceed as follows. The IGC files for the claim flights must be the ones originally transferred from the flight recorder. The IGC file from any recording device that does not have a sufficient approval level for the claim being made shall be disregarded when performing the data analysis. The data analyst must confirm the security of each file using the appropriate validation program and verify continuity of flight. Basically, the data analysis has to ensure that the claim satisfies the requirements of the sporting code. The code does not specify a particular analysis method. Appendix 7 of Annex C shows a list of flight analysis software. At least one NAC uses a set of checklists for the analysis. This is to ensure consistency and quality. We will finally deal with items relevant to FAI World and Continental records. As of October 2023, all official observers may control flights for records. The previous requirement whereby an official observer needed additional written approval from his NAC, sometimes known as Senior OO status, has been removed. The official observer must ensure that the aircraft fulfills the requirements of the intended record class, aircraft type, wingspan, etc. Notice of an impending record claim must be submitted to the FAI by the controlling NAC, the organising NAC, or the official observer. The FAI must receive this notice within 7 days following the flight. Claims for FAI World or Continental records must use the appropriate FAI record claim forms. There are sections to be completed by the pilot, the official observers, and the NAC data analyst and claims officers. In the next slide, where are these forms located? We start at the usual internet address for IGC documents. We click on Records and Record Claim Forms. The various forms now appear. Which of the first 3 will be required depends on the type of record being claimed. Form D is required when a motor glider was used. Form E is always required. The claims officer of the organising NAC has the task of submitting the complete claim documentation to the FAI Record Office. Submission must take place within 120 days of the flight. In exceptional circumstances, the President of the IGC may grant an extension. And that's it. I hope this has been able to help you in your activities as an official observer.